Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if you're going to miss Congress, but Congress will surely miss you. China's story of itself and the CCP's grievance against the West often centers around the century of humiliation. During the century of humiliation, the Western world, particularly the British Empire, once destabilized China with opium. Now China is the one destabilizing the world with opioids like fentanyl. The CCP has become the very evil it claims to resent and resist. The greatest victim is the United States, which is facing the deadliest drug crisis in American history. Fentanyl, which is 50 times more potent than heroin, is the dominant driver of our most deadly drug crisis. 97% of the fentanyl precursors are produced in China. Attorney General Barr, is it fair to say that the Chinese Communist Party has American blood on its hands, that it is singularly responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of American citizens?
That's the way I view it. I think they have the ability to stop it. And instead of doing that, I think they're encouraging it.
And the CCP is fueling an illicit narcotics trade that has brought untold death and destruction, not only in the U.S., but across the globe. So I'm wondering, why have the actions of the CCP not led to a greater backlash from the international community? Where's the outrage? Where's the international pressure? Why is the CCP essentially getting away with murder in the international community?
Because I think over the long history of drugs, there's been a tendency, which I think is mistaken, to view it as essentially the problem of the people who are taking drugs. And so there's been this idea in the drug arena that, well, it's really the Americans' problem. They have the demand. And I think generally that's an oversimplification, but especially in the case of these very potent synthetic drugs, because the people who are taking them and dying more and more are people who they're not drug addicts that are trying to get chasing a high and addicted, and they're taking it because they're addicted. They think it's Adderall. They think it's a Xanax. They think it's a party drug or a study drug, more and more, and it's poison, and they don't know what they're taking. So that's why I started out by saying I think this is this is much more like a murder, like shooting into a crowd. With moral certainty you're going to be killing people. And that's what makes it outrageous. But I am stunned that there's not more of a reaction over this kind of trafficking. This is poison, and it's being trafficked into our country with moral certainty that it's going to kill tens of thousands, now hundreds of thousands of people.
So we are pursuing a diplomatic approach to China with respect to countering the illicit fentanyl trade. But to your point, China claims that the fentanyl crisis is a domestic problem made in America. It acknowledges no complicity whatsoever in the fentanyl crisis. And so if China acknowledges no complicity, how do we know the diplomatic approach is going to work? How do we know if the CCP is not merely stringing us along?
Is that to me?
Yeah.
I mean, that's my concern. I think the value of this report is it really strips away, an excuse by the Chinese, and it makes it clear that we understand that they've been encouraging this. We understand they have the ability to enforce the law and to stop it, and therefore, I think we should be increasing the consequences of their inaction seriously, and I think that'll change things.
So if the persuasive approaches are not working, what coercive approaches can we take? What would that look like, increasing the consequences of their actions?
Economic penalties. I mean, frankly, their economy needs us more than we need them. But I think we should at least threaten and be willing to take economic retaliation, and including moving to sanctions. Before you came in, I talked about creating a legal vehicle, the way we have with terrorism and other things, whereby the victims can go after the companies and the individuals who are involved in this and get judgments against them, and then have a process for trying to maximize their opportunity to recover. I think by bringing to bear all the victims of these predations, that'll be a very potent weapon. And if you're running a business, including a business that's a legitimate business in China, you're not going to want to have anything to do with this.
I have a quick question about 2020. In 2020, during the onset of the global pandemic, China imposed a lockdown that disrupted all supply chains, including the fentanyl supply chain. But despite those disruptions, we saw a dramatic rise in the number of lethal drug overdoses in the United States from 70,000 in 2019 to over 90,000 in 2020. Can you explain that paradox, that discrepancy, Mr. Donovan or Mr. Lucky?
Yes, we noticed that same paradox as well, and I think it's more attributable to the fact that the treatment centers were shut down, outreach patient treatment centers were shut down, and there was still fentanyl coming in. It was one of the primary drugs that was still making its way into the United States, while many of the other drugs were still being stockpiled in the United States. So that combination of COVID lockdown with access to fentanyl created that.